What is in and what is out for books in 2024. I saw a bunch of people do this on Instagram with regards to their personal lives and their professional lives and their hobbies like books, and I thought, I'm gonna make a video out of that. Stolen! Within just the first few days of 2024, I have made a goals list, which just had 3 goals on it, and an announcement that I had changed and rebranded the channel from Books and Bow to Willow Talks Books. But I'm not done yet. I can feel my reading tastes change and my priorities shift as we go into this new year. I'm not a big one for New Year's resolutions, but I can just feel myself changing, and that happens to coincide with the start of this year. So let's follow that in and out trend and see what's in and out for books in 2024. At least where I'm concerned. I made a pair of lists, and the in list happens to be twice as long as the out list. Depending on how you look at that, that's either me being very, very positive, or me trying to overachieve and be a perfectionist. And I know I'm a perfectionist, and I know I'm a workaholic, because I love my work, so Let's start with what's in. During my reading goals for 2024 video, I talked about how the Books and Bow website and the Willow Talks Books channel have historically been dedicated to and built on a foundation of talking about international literature and translation. But I want to push that a little bit further, be both more specific and broader. My first in for 2024 is to decolonize my bookshelf and ask you to do the same. That doesn't mean get rid of all your Charles Dickens. What it means is spending 2024 as diversely as possible when it comes to your reading. As I said, I want to return to a focus on translated fiction from all around the world. Most of my favorite authors are from Japan, South Korea, China, Argentina, Chile, and other parts of Europe. And I want to continue to broaden my scope with regards to that. Decolonizing your bookshelf doesn't just mean reading more books in translation. It also means reading fiction from indigenous people, from the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, as well as reading books that are translated or otherwise from languages like Arabic. Decolonizing your bookshelf means more than just focusing on books in translation from other predominantly white nations, like those in Northern and Western Europe, but also focusing on non-white nations and cultures. So I personally am going to put a focus on indigenous writers and Middle Eastern writers, at least. Spinning off from that, my second in is to read more non-fiction from queer writers, feminist writers, and black writers. I want to fill my brain with thoughts and opinions, philosophy, history from queer, feminist, black, indigenous, Arab writers. Again, decolonizing my brain and my bookshelf as best I can. I need to do some research on this topic because while I've read a lot of queer and feminist non-fiction, I haven't read that much non-fiction from black British writers, African writers, Arab writers, indigenous writers, etc. So I plan on fixing that in 2024. On a much less heavy note, another in for me in 2024 is science fiction. I'll talk more about this in the out section, but I spent a lot of 2023 being obsessed with gothic and historical fiction, as well as horror fiction, but horror isn't going anywhere. I'm not going to ever stop reading a lot of horror. But I feel like my genre obsession for 2024 is going to be science fiction. For the last few weeks, my partner and I have been steadily making our way through Star Trek Voyager at a pretty decent click. I'm not a die-hard Trekkie, but I have watched the original series, Next Generation, and most of the films. But I've never seen Deep Space Nine or Voyager, or Enterprise, but no one likes Enterprise. And I am loving Voyager. Absolutely loving it. I'm going to get my partner to watch Battlestar Galactica soon, which is probably my favourite TV show, and I don't think I've ever mentioned that on this channel before, but I love Battlestar Galactica. And then I want to watch Deep Space Nine, and all of this sci-fi TV goodness has made me want to read more sci-fi books. I love science fiction. I've read a lot of sci-fi in my life, but I want to enter my sci-fi era for 2024, so expect quite a lot of sci-fi this year. Another in is something that I'm tackling as we speak. Scottish literature. I moved up to Scotland a few months ago. I love it here for multiple reasons, but mostly the politics. As a trans person, I am safer in Scotland and I'm better taken care of. Politically and economically, Scotland is fueled by a lot of social policy. And as a socialist, I'm thrilled. Scotland has so far not let me down. It is a beautiful place full of amazing people, and I really like the politics of Scotland. So I owe it to my new home to read more Scottish Scottish literature. I am doing that right now in January. I've got a stack of Scottish books I'm slowly getting through, and I'm going to continue that trend throughout this year and read as much Scottish lit as I can. A goal that I almost always have every single year is to focus on shorter books. I have ADHD. I am increasingly of the opinion that a book doesn't need to be more than 300 or 400 pages max. It's so hard to justify a giant book. And so I want to focus on shorter books. I know it's what I enjoy, and there is a real, true craft, a real artistry to creating a perfect short novel, to get all of the power and the oomph and the emotion and the thematic depth of a novel down to under 200 pages. That is a true art, and I want to explore that more. I already read a lot of short fiction, but it's going to be a focus of mine this year, is to try and avoid needlessly long and convoluted books. That being said, I just said I want to read more sci-fi, and I've got a bunch of sci-fi books on my TBR that are around 500-600 pages each. So these things are starting to clash a bit. But supporting my focus on short books also means doing what I mentioned in my reading goals, which is reading more poetry. And I'm also going to read more short story collections as well. Again, I already love short stories. I read quite a lot of short story collections, but I can always do more. So I'm focusing on poetry and short stories. I won't dwell on this because I talked about poetry in my reading goals, but poetry is in this year, as are short stories. Another real quick one is YA fiction. Again, I talked about this in my reading goals video, but I am discovering YA fiction right now. I am learning about the breadth and scope of young adult books. There is so much great YA literature out there across all genres that I love. I've recently read some great YA science fiction, YA horror, and I'm turning my attention to YA thrillers as well. There are some amazing sounding young adult thrillers out there that I'm going to read very soon. Young adult fiction is in, and I'm very excited to sink my teeth into a genre, mode, medium of writing that I have just ignored and snubbed for a long time, very unfairly. And my final in is a focus on literary prizes. I am really bad at focusing on prizes. When the Books and Bow blog first launched, I really focused on the Booker International Prize for obvious reasons. I wanted to know what international translated literature people were talking about. But then that kind of fizzled. Originally, the International Booker Prize was my source of translated literature until I got to discover all of the indie publishers, authors, and translators, and I didn't need to rely on the prize anymore. But this year, I want to return to prizes a little bit. Prizes are fun, so expect a few videos about things like the International Booker and the Women's Prize, those two especially. But there are a lot of great book prizes out there that I completely ignore, which focus on some of the things I've talked about. Black writers, Indigenous writers, other prizes that focus on international books in translation, so I need to explore some of those as well. Now for what's out. I have 4 things, but they can each be paired up. So the first 2 are historical fiction and gothic fiction. I was obsessed in 2023 with historical fiction and gothic fiction. And I've talked many times about the fact that gothic fiction, while a kind of loosely defined genre at times, and increasingly so as the genre becomes experimented upon more and more. Well, I lost my train of thought there. I love gothic books. It's my favourite genre, I would argue. But I need to take a break from it and focus on other things, which is why I'm going to obsess over sci-fi this year, as well as young adult books and blah blah blah. So, historical fiction, gothic fiction, those 2 are out, at least for now. But that, as I said before, does not include horror. There's a lot of good horror coming out in 2024, and I'm not going to ignore it. I sometimes get comments from people saying that they're sick of all of my horror content and my historical content, blah blah blah. I have sorry right on my lips, and I don't want to say it because I know I don't have to. It's my channel. I'm not going to give in to my Britishness and say sorry for no reason. I will continue to read, review, and enjoy horror fiction all the way through this year and forever, but historical fiction and more gothic stuff, those things can just sit by the side for a little while. I might read a few. I'm only human. But we'll see. And the other 2 things that are out this year, I hope, in a very broad sense, are social media and checking my comments. I obsess over these things way too much, as so many of us do. I haven't been on Twitter pretty much since Musk bought it. I was like, yeah, I'm out. The transphobia started to ramp up and suddenly Twitter was just transphobia. It just started to feel like it had become 4chan. And I only barely know what 4chan is, but I know it's where weird men go. And suddenly that's what Twitter was, so okay, Twitter's out. Twitter's been out for a while. So then I got Threads. Threads is now full of transphobia as well. It's all I see when I go on there. So I've deleted the app off my phone. I'm not going to touch it. Shortly after moving to Scotland, I also stopped posting on TikTok because my TikToks always go viral. No matter what they're about, I make a TikTok and it gets hundreds of thousands of views, and I don't like it. Because those views come with comments and I can't help but read the comments and I don't like them. I had a real existential crisis about deleting TikTok. Like, if I didn't make TikTok videos, my YouTube channel would die, my blog would die. I suddenly thought that TikTok is the future and without it I won't have a career. I honestly convinced myself that that was true. So I still have a profile on there, but I deleted the app off my phone like 3 months ago. I haven't looked back and things are fine. So I need to calm down when it comes to the idea of social media and a person's relevancy. I don't need to be on it all the time. That said, big massive caveat, the one bit of social media that has remained lovely for me is Instagram. And I know Instagram, Threads and Facebook are all meta, but for whatever reason, Instagram has proven to be a real haven for me. I can spend all day posting things, scrolling through things, talking to people, messaging people, blah blah blah, and Instagram will just be a delight the entire time. So hopefully that'll stay true, and I might even spend more time on it and try and grow my Instagram. I know that's kind of a thing people were doing years ago, but I'm having fun on it. But apart from Instagram, I'm saying goodbye to social media. No more Twitter, and no more Twitter clones. Blue Sky, Threads, none of it does my brain any good. And I'm also already done with TikTok, so hopefully I won't feel the urge to return to it in 2024. But I don't want to speak too soon. We'll see. And connected to that, as I said, is checking my comments. I can't help but check comments on TikTok, so I deleted it. But when it comes to YouTube, as you'll know if you comment a lot on my videos, I like them all at the very least, and I often reply to comments. When my channel was a bit smaller, I replied to every single comment I ever got. Now it's down to like 50%, maybe a bit less, 30%. But I read every single comment I ever get on YouTube. I check my comments once every 2 or 3 hours. It is ridiculous. And I need to try to calm down with that. I need to do something like post a video and then read the comments for the first 2 hours and then not again. But that's not how the YouTube app works, and the YouTube app really feeds off my need to know what's going on at all times. So I'm gonna do my best to stop checking my comments as much, because I'm trans on the internet. The amount of hate that I get in my YouTube comments is staggering. So for my own mental health, I'm gonna do my best to avoid that. There you go. That is what's in and out for me and books in 2024. My real focus here is international literature, decolonizing my bookshelf, a focus on Black writers, Indigenous writers, Arab writers, etc, etc. That's where my real focus should be this year. And I hope you'll join me. I hope you'll also decolonize your bookshelf. Let's read diversely. Let's be good feminists, good queers or queer allies, and good readers of diverse fiction. Support me on Patreon if you'd like to, and subscribe for books.